everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are here for today's webinar on competitive intelligence for marketing managers. It is one of the most requested topics after we started doing the series for different job titles and roles that the companies have. And in a world where markets are evolving faster than ever, marketing is no longer about just being creative or executing it at the right point. It's about making the right decisions at the right time and using the right information and pieces of data. That's why we bring to you competitive intelligence for marketing managers. So today's session is focused on how marketing teams can move beyond guesswork and assumption and start making more analytical and intelligent decisions that are led by information and data that is collected properly for the goals that they're trying to achieve. And I'm pleased to be joined by Oliver Guirdham, the CEO of the business research company, with us. He will be leading the webinar today, along with me, Soumya, the marketing manager of the business research company. In my role, I have had multiple opportunities to work closely with Oliver and understand how translating intelligence and putting them into practical marketing strategies is one of the most crucial things that a marketer should do at any point of time. So let's move ahead. Very welcome, Oliver.
Hi, Soumya. Thank you.
Right. So let's move on and start our presentation for today. My question to you is why do you think competitive intelligence has become such an indispensable idea for marketing managers today? And not just marketing managers, but for marketing analytics, looking at sales, understanding what kind of people you should be targeting, what kind of strategies you should be building, or looking at the type of content that you should be utilizing to promote yourself. So, looking at the factors, there are 6 key factors which I've figured out for our chat today. So, understanding and spotting trends early on within the market as they go on. Thereafter, tracking your competition deeply and improving your campaigns. So, now, do you track the correct competition? Do you track the correct section or segment of competition from where you can utilize the information and apply it to your business? It's a very important thing for you to understand which competition should you be tracking more within your market. Then looking at trends and spotting them early on. See, one example that I can give you is within digital marketing. Google's algorithm keeps on changing every now and then. And it is a business. Their model is to keep on experimenting what's best for them. Our job is to make ourselves aware of that, spotting the trends, and utilizing our information to make changes towards our websites, products, services, so that we are able to penetrate and fight through the competition that's going on. Then improving campaigns. I pointed out these 3 points together because if you are able to spot out the trends early on and you're tracking the right set of competition and utilizing the particular sets of data information that would be more applicable to the promotions that you're doing, the channels where you're promoting in, or how you are reaching out to your customers, then you would be able to improve your campaigns more proactively. There's a habit that earlier marketers had, specifically working in, let's say, search engine optimization. They would react a lot to the algorithm changes, and then the volumes would be fought through with increasing volumes and just posting out more content in general. But now things have changed. So in order to look at the trends, how the trends are managing the market thereafter, you have to look at how you can improvise on your campaigns. If you're reactive, you're reacting very fast, you're just making the changes as you observe them, you may or may not be able to cover the gap, or you might just as well create a bigger gap. Therefore, you have to improve your campaigns in a direction where they're buildable, they are at a correct frequency, and you're looking at and tracking competitors in a way where you understand what you are doing. Now, for considering the hidden points of competition, strengthening positioning, and allocating budgets better. We'll talk about these 3 points together. So, budget allocation is one of the key things for marketing. You have to give yourself a sufficient return on investment for any of the campaigns that you're running. In order to do that, you have to do competitive intelligence in a direction where your position is strengthening, but at the same time, you are able to grab the white space and have innovative strategies fighting up within the market. So, when you talk about competitive intelligence, you have to keep your eyes open in all the directions. You have to look at the competition, not just from the numbers point of view, but how are they using that information? Because now, in a world where AI has most of the answers that you're looking for, your competition will also have the same answers and the similar pieces of information that you have. So, how you utilize this information and how you track the correct data points for your competition is what matters. Right. Moving on to the next slide, please. All right, so let's understand and look at what is the reality of marketing and how much information is available to us today. There's way too much data. We have tools for everything and anything. We're building our own tools, we have analytics, we have dashboards. We have too much data to figure out, okay, is this the data point that I'm going to be using for my latest campaign, or is this what I should look at? In order to identify and mark out, okay, if I'm looking at the kind of people visiting my website, you have to look at, are they what are the geographies they're visiting from, what are the type of people they are. You can also look at heat maps to optimize a website even more, or you can look at analytics to understand how the conversion would go ahead. Now, second point, campaigns moving faster than insights. Yes, of course. If the algorithms are changing, if the market is that dynamic, then your campaigns will move faster than the insights that you're gathering. But then yet again, if you're keeping an eye open, if you're observing more proactively and looking at campaigns as a cycle where you make a change, you observe the change, you adapt to the change, and then you are more agile towards the changes that are coming up. It's not just about launching faster, it's about testing, launching, and then learning. So you have to bring up that level of agility in your campaigns where you're not sticking to that idea of conventional, say, off-page SEO or the conventional way of article writing. It has to be more towards how the LLMs would read it, or how the social media markers would read it. Or when you're writing an email, try and do A/B testing and understand, is this how I would do better, or let me just look at the data and see what would work better. Then, for pressure to justify decisions. See, we all are working in a very reactive environment right now. For the last 10 to 12 months, we can see that markets are just fluctuating at a speed that we were finding very difficult to comprehend. But at the moment, where multiple things are going on in the macro environment, our jobs would be to understand, how is our competition reacting to all of this? Are they making some changes that's bringing them above you or at par with you, or are you falling behind at some point? And then thereafter, adapting to those changes with agility, looking at, not just giving in to the pressure of the change or the pressure of the for example, the change in algorithm, and adapting to the algorithm just because you have to. Like I said, you do not have to react. You have to respond to the change. You have to respond to the change in a way where you understand, okay, this is what I have to do to my campaign. This is what the competition is doing. And think looking at the data, the information is that these are the points which show me that the latest changes out of the three, these two are working for the competition. Maybe I give it a try for these two first and then give it a try for the third data point. Or you give it the try for the first data point and then wait it out and learn and adapt later on. Now, marketing is decision making under uncertainty. Of course, see, we are never given a clear definition of what exactly is going to work for which industry, for what product, if it's B2B, B2C, and D2C. There are different strategies, different ideas, different models of campaigns. Your business model is a definition, your vision and mission is a definition of what you would like to define your strategy or how you would like to define your strategy. So there is always a sense of underlying uncertainty where you will have to keep your mind open and be agile to any of the changes or any of the uh, sudden upgrades that would come up. So, you know, your pressure does not have to justify the decisions. You have to be accountable in a way where data and logic is impacting your business decisions and not just the pressure. So you will have to make your decisions under the pressure. You'll have to always, find out complete information and then look at the messaging, the channel, or the way you run your campaigns. Yeah. So handing over to the next slide, Oliver, off to you.
Thank you, Soumya. Yes, so having talked a little bit about why competitive intelligence is important for marketing, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the kind of concrete aspects of how it's done and the different types. Um, and I'm going to break that up into two sections. One talking about how you can utilize secondary research as a marketing manager, and then talking about how you can utilize primary research. Now, um, talking about secondary research techniques, that again splits into two main categories. One of them is a kind of one-off assessment when you're really taking a snapshot of a particular market at a particular time, and trying to understanding the competitive environment. And then there's ongoing assessment where you're setting up tools to monitor your competitors on a continuous basis. So when we look at a snapshot, this could be um, triggered by the fact that you're entering a new market. So it could be that you're going through a go-to-market phase and you want to do a complete competitor assessment at that point. It could be that there's some other key decision that needs to be made, further investment, maybe a stop-go decision, maybe which geographies to focus on, and you're looking to get to do more in-depth research at that point. Or it could be that you do these exercises on a regular basis, a sort of deeper dive on a regular basis, maybe 6 monthly, mainly maybe annually, and then hopefully that would be supported by the kind of ongoing research. So what might you do in one of these kind of deep dive snapshots of the market where you're looking in more depth at how things are looking at a particular moment? Um, so primarily you're doing a competitor market assessment, so just looking at who, what, where, when, who are your competitors, what are they doing, where are they operating, etc. So it's really a kind of a bit of an audit of your competitive landscape. Um, Another aspect of this can often be that you're doing some kind of market share analysis. Most companies are very concerned with monitoring their market share on an ongoing basis. It's critical for sort of benchmarking your own company's performance. And so doing a market share analysis can be another reason for this kind of snapshot. Another reason can be to look at competitor health or try and learn lessons from your competitors at a particular point. It it is not competitive intelligence is not just about looking at things that your competitors are doing well and responding to them. It's also about looking learning lessons. So it's not just about in a sense competition, but also just improving, just lesson learning, gaining understanding for how you can do what you do better, things that they've tried and have worked. You want to adopt things that they've tried and haven't worked. You want to be avoiding, and you can save yourself a lot of time and money by seeing what your competitors have done and skipping and making decisions based on that rather than having to learn everything yourself. So you're kind of using your competitors as guinea pigs for your own understanding. More common these days, I would say, is ongoing secondary intelligence. Now, um, that's because I think most people want, most companies have a look to have an ongoing capability for their competitive research. And there's a whole bunch of tools available now to support you in doing this. Some of the most common ones are things like Clue, Compete, many others that allow you to continuously track your competitors, or you can outsource that process to a research agency like ourselves who can utilize tools of this type and deliver um, tailored packages to you. So, what are the advantages of doing this type of ongoing competitive research? So you get all the basic information that helps you understand your competitors. So it could be product launch information, financial information, the company's official announcements, any interviews that have been done by their leadership team, any market entries or exits that they announce. So the first level is really the kind of official information that the company is, your competitors are releasing. Second level of information is information that is not deliberately communicated by your competitors, but inadvertently communicated. So it could be employee feedback sites. It could be job advertisements, um, so that you're getting a picture of what's going on in that company, where they're hiring, what their employees are saying, etc. Um, from third party sites or from doing checks on their output. So things like online store checks and price checks. So all these methods take you a step further than what the company is communicating out through its own marketing department to understand what it's doing better through other information that's available, but it's still all available. We're still looking at stuff that's available through the web. Another level up from that is kind of using social media listening to pick up sentiment analysis, to understand, what share of voice your competitors have, how much they're being mentioned, um, to understand any criticisms they're getting, which could become opportunities for your own company. And again, this gives you a kind of unofficial view and a very kind of unbiased view because consumers tend to be fairly blunt in the way that they communicate their feelings about yourself, and also about your competitors. And then the final part of this way of tracking your competitors on an ongoing basis through secondary research is to do kind of website analysis of their activities, how many users they've got, how what their website, how well their website is performing, etc. And Sonia's going to say a little bit more about this because this is obviously something that she does frequently in her role.
All right. So moving ahead, Oliver, please continue.
Oh, Sonia, I thought you were going to add something a bit about how you do monitoring of website performance and things for
Yeah.
competitors.
Yeah. Let's move back, please, Falguni. Yeah. All right. So just to look at the point where we are monitoring our competitors on a regular basis, first of all, either you could just do it, manually and eyeball things that a human perspective would notice before a tool. But if you're looking to gather data and build up data in a way that it funnels down to information that you can build up and apply as trends and the changes that they're making throughout a period of time, then there are multiple tools such as SEMrush, AHRF, or many, many, many tools which you can trust upon. And like Oliver mentioned, that you have to understand their share of voice, their rankings in the market, or how they are looking at and manipulating the content that they're promoting, or what type of content that they're using. If it's an educative tone of content, now that we have started using artificial intelligence to write most of our content, it becomes heavily crucial for us to see that LLMs from where we are writing our content does not do not perceive our content as plagiarized. So if you are a type of a product marketing product company, or you're into products marketing, or even if you're into services marketing, even if it's B2C or B2B, any sort of marketing, you'll have to make sure that the content that you are writing and promoting ahead is not flagged as plagiarized, because you have the same tools as your
Yeah,
competitor.
but just so in terms of the way that you can look at competitors through these tools, how do they allow you to, what information do they give you about your competitors? What can you find out about competitors by using these tools?
So there is pool of information that you can get. So let's take an example of one of the most easily available tools called SEMrush.
Mm,
So that tool has different segregation of ideas that you can pick up from. You can do keyword research, as in what are the particular keywords your competition is using, what are the keywords that are ranking for them, was there a drop, was there a change. Then there's like paid campaign analysis. You can see what are the kind of ads that they're doing, what ads did how well. So this is all somewhat ballpark, but then these tools work on a basis where they gather the information from the direct website itself. They do monitor these websites for you. Then you can also look at the type of content. And if you say, it will also highlight if these pieces of content by your competition have done better with respect to what you are doing. It can give you a comparative analysis and your ranking standing as well. Then you can also look at any other AI related changes, such as the latest idea that I have started utilizing and liking a lot more lately is trend spotting. So if there's a trend of pages that are ranking better, or if there's a certain product or a service for the competition that's ranking better or that's getting a lot of engagement, the tool will highlight that for you and position you with respect to the competition. It'll give you a comparison where you understand, or your similar services are ranked by that tool, to make give you a perspective of how you can promote those tools or look at the low hanging fruit, and what direction should
great.
you take campaigns with. Yeah.
Fantastic, yeah. So SEMrush was the one you mentioned there, right? But there are a number of these tools, but
Yeah.
it's uh amazing what you can find out about your competitors by using these tools and by picking up on the way they're using their websites effectively and how effective that's being and lessons you can learn for your own marketing from that.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Simon. Next slide. So I've talked quite a bit about secondary methods for doing competitive research for marketing managers. Obviously, the other way is to do primary research, to actually talk to people. Um, Primary research is kind of what we're all about as a company, so we obviously think it's important, but what are the specific reasons for doing primary research in this case? Get more insight into context, you get more behavioral insights, you get more validations of the signals that you picked up, perhaps from secondary research or from AI research or however you've done it, and you can unearth more hidden opportunities. But yeah, there's always and I guess the biggest single benefit of primary research is that you're picking up on information that other people don't have available to them. So if all your competitors are tracking each other and tracking you, and you're tracking all of them, you're all kind of sharing a pool of information, of secondary information. But if you go out there and do primary research yourself, you're getting access to an additional set of information, which your competitors don't have access to. So while we do a huge amount of desk research and ongoing research processes, we're we're always keen that our clients use primary as a key part of the mix. Um, Next slide, please. So, what are the key ways that you would use primary research to gather competitive intelligence as a marketeer? So, the first way is simply by speaking to your competitors, right? Or I would say in this case, particularly by using agencies or outsiders or third parties to speak to your competitors. Now, um, some people often sort of are surprised by this in the sense they say, "Oh no, that wouldn't work," or "Why would competitors speak to you?" or "Why would they give you any useful information?" I think we've done lots of competitor studies where we do detailed interviews with our clients' competitors, and it's possible to get very useful information. Sometimes you're talking to people who used to work at these companies. Often you're talking to people who currently work there. You can be doing approaching it more as a market study, but picking up information about the specific competitor. So this is the way to get more niche and non-public insights into your competitors. Different companies have different views about it. You have to be somewhat careful about it from the regulatory point of view, but it's clearly possible and something that we do quite a bit of. The second approach is to view these things through your customers. So getting information from your customers about your competitors. So and this includes both broad level surveys and more in-depth, smaller numbers of more in-depth interviews. Um, Similar things, but the way that you approach them and the kind of depth and nuance is obviously greater in in-depth interviews. Customer surveys obviously give you more quantitative or statistical type information. Um, at the top level, you can find out uh, who, which competitors your customers or customers within the market are aware of. So how many of them will they positively identify? How many of them are they aware of when they're prompted? Net approval scores. This is definitely for surveys, but overall brand perception, it can be both survey or in-depth interviews. In perception of of their pricing, and then benchmarking yourself against these competitors through surveys. So these are two of the main ways that we can use this type of primary research. Um, Another key way that people use um, primary research to get competitive intelligence, or marketers do, is picking up information from the sales team. So the most common type being kind of win-loss analysis. But your internal sales team is a critical source of information generally about you, about your product, but also about your competitors. Because if you're going through the kind of win-loss process effectively, then you should be getting competitor names thrown back to the sales team and competitor information thrown back to the sales team that you can pick up on. Channel checks are another important potential way of getting competitor information. So if there are any intermediaries in your market, um, they can be a key source for competitive in information. They are often interacting very heavily with different competitors in the market. So developing strong relationship with them and looking for and gathering information for them from them is a really useful way to get competitive insight. As I said, they have a broader overview, and they can often be a really useful source of information. And then finally, different types of observation primary research, which could be things like mystery shopping. So actually checking your competitors' offering directly, kind of in the guise of a customer through it could be through an agency, a research agency that does that kind of work, or in some cases you can do it yourself. So that's particularly useful for understanding, the kind of service element of what they offer, and how well they communicate and what they're communicating to their potential customers. Um, so there's a whole range of ways that you can get information on your competitors that you can then adapt your marketing strategies to through primary research, and it's probably through a combination of these approaches. I would say a combination of these kind of primary approaches um, on a as needs basis, on a project basis, and then continuous monitoring, utilizing these excellent tools that are now available to pull together both publicly communicated information, but also other signals that are out there, are a really good way to understand what your competitors are doing and get continuous updates on those changes. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so just to run through a few of the case studies of the type of projects that we've done in of this type. So this first one was improving the positioning for a B2B software as a service marketing team. Um, so this one was interesting in that they were uh, finding that their software was struggling somewhat in the public market. We did a bunch of interviews, um, win-loss analysis, spoke to some experts in the market, as well as secondary research of what the product features, etc., were of their competitors. What we found was that the competitors were positioning around uh, ease of implementation and not feature depth. So what the study really found was that the company was very concerned about its quality of and depth of capability, but that the competitors were succeeding by just being easier to use, more available, easier to implement, etc. And that was a really useful finding for this company. So competitive intelligence can it's not just about kind of competing, but it's also about finding out things that you're doing wrong and that you can improve. Next slide. So this was a survey that we did for a telecoms experience management solution provider. They were really a company that sends out kind of SMS advertisements to your phone, that kind of thing. And competitive intelligence was only one part of this. So they were looking to speak to primarily to their customers, but there was a competitive element in there, and this helped. Um, so yeah, I just had this case studies to show that even when you're doing kind of client research, customer research, competitive intelligence can be an important part of that, and you can pick up really useful information about how your clients are changing their opinions of competitors, what features they've got, how much those things are cutting through, etc. Next slide, please. This was a very basic project, legal expenses insurance market. This was, I guess, sorry, can you move forward again? Um, uh, this would be an example of the kind of go-to-market or initial type of high-level research that you would do in a market that you're um, first entering. So it was pretty much just kind of finding out who the competitors were, what services they offered, um, basic points of their proposition, that this company was using a research agency to do, to put it all together into a sort of neat format that they could communicate to their senior management. So sometimes competitor research can be that simple. Next slide. Yeah, so this was a well-being products and services for high-earning professionals. So this was a company that was planning to launch a service in this area, a well-being service, to be sold to high-end professionals, both through their companies and directly to the individuals. Um, and this can be an example again of where the competitive information um, doesn't just sort of help you tactically in terms of um, competing against particular features or marketing messages that your competitors have, but also can affect the whole strategy. So in this case, we did a lot of research into their competitors, um, and it didn't just highlight some tactical opportunities, but it also highlighted the fact that a lot of those competitors were actually struggling, not really gaining that much traction, that there was a lot of hidden competition in the market. So, when you asked people about well-being services provided by their companies or that they could pay for themselves, well, certainly from the in the company context, they tended to highlight the fact that they had gym memberships supplied to them, or the quality of the food, or those kind of things. So um, people saw well-being and well-being provision from their employer in a wider sense than a well-being app, which was what these people were um, marketing, and that was a potential issue for the offering. So this type of competitive intelligence can be tactical, but it can also be quite strategic and quite sort of business critical. Great. I think that's the last one of the case studies. Yes. So I'm just going to hand back over to Soumya to just talk through what it is that marketing teams um, need from competitive intelligence. Yeah, over to you, Soumya.
Thank you, Oliver. So we'll talk about key five things what marketing teams need while they're looking at competitive intelligence or any sort of intelligence, not just particularly tracking their competition, but how are they utilizing their information. Now, for insights, not using insights not just as information, but as a point which can help you make your decision better. So, for example, knowing that your customer, or sorry, your competitor launched a campaign is a piece of information, but you understanding how did the customers perceive it or how did it perform is an insight. So, understanding the insight from the information is a very crucial point. Then, next is validating findings. So, you cannot just trust upon one single source of information. We have multiple tools, we have multiple competitors as well, right? So, when you're looking at, say, the content strategy or the keyword strategy for a competition, then you will have to look at multiple sources, as in, are the tools consistently giving you the same signals in the direction that you also have to make the changes? Do not be very proactively reactive to the single piece of information that you are seeing. Look at it, analyze it from multiple sources, combine that with primary research, like Oliver mentioned, that if all of your customer competitors are sharing a pool of information in common, then what makes you stand apart? It's primary research. It is by speaking to the managers at different companies that you would like to work with, or looking at the win and loss surveys or analysis with your um, prospects, clients, and from the feedback from your sales team, is when you understand that your decisions are based on ensured consistency, that you're combining the data with real customer feedback and with what is exactly happening within the market. Now, if we have to look at deep competitor understanding here as well, not just tracking but understanding how the competition is making their decisions, positioning themselves, and how the customers are perceiving them. So, for example, a company that you're competing with might position themselves for some particular feature A, but the customers might be converting for them for a particular feature Z. So there's a difference and a gap between their understanding. So if you're able to understand that feature Z is what is converting their customers the most, you can implement that. And that's where the perspective of the customer or understanding your competition thoroughly comes into the play. Now, looking at a forward-looking perspective, we always base our marketing reports or our analysis upon the information that we have collected in the past. But how are we utilizing that information to make our decisions or frame our strategies going ahead is very important. So, spotting early messaging, for example, trends like AI led trends or the autonomous trends or automation trends right now, that could really impact some things such as your particular social media channel strategies or your content strategies. And before things get saturated is when you have to enter the trend. Because after saturation, it's again a competition within the competition to understand what are the pieces of information that you could have picked up on time. Now, the last point is about clear outputs. So, clear outputs do not mean that you have to give a very aesthetically pleasing report. It also has to be the clear insights of the data points that you are utilizing. So, like we understood from the perspective, if you understand feature A is not working out for the competition, but feature Z is, then you can pick up that insight from the data that there are two features that they are portraying, and you can utilize the information and the insight of feature Z on your product or your company and get the return out of that. So overall, the marketing teams really need to have clarity on what is validated, what's actionable information, and a forward-looking perspective. Next slide, please. All right, how marketing uses competitive intelligence. So now I like to think of competitive intelligence as the baseline of all of the work that we are doing, all of the campaigns that we are running, how we are trying to translate the information and utilizing all of the data that we have gathered, analyzed in our everyday actions. So talking about the first point, campaign planning. Until you know what kind of messaging your competition is using, what kind of angles they are utilizing to stand out, how will you make your difference? How will you differentiate yourself? And would you simply focus on what they are doing, or would you use that information to do better? Then, positioning decisions. So, it's always about the perception of the customer. You might try 100 things, but when you understand that if your competitors are positioning themselves as, say, a quality provider or a premium provider, or let's say a complex multi directional provider, your perception and your understanding of how you should be positioned becomes different. So it's very crucial to understand if there's a gap in positioning, or if you're overcrowded in a certain section of messaging, and if there's a white space that you can utilize to portray yourself and be positioned differently. Then competitor tracking, like Oliver has been highlighting, that it's not just important that you monitor them, you track them, but it is also highly important that you look at the signs, the early on trends, or the signals within the market. Is this product doing well for them? Are they portraying some of their services differently, which are converting better? Or what is the share? How are they expanding within a particular market or a particular geography? And using that information to build up your own insights that are applicable. Then, product messaging. I feel after artificial intelligence and multiple LLMs running around us, content is the king. How we write our content and how our content is taken up by multiple algorithms, and your users, your readers of information, has become an extremely crucial point of contact for a company, because sometimes how you portray yourself may position you as a low price, non luxury item. But if you at the same time have a penetrative strategy and have a cost that is moderate within the market, and then the discounting strategies are slightly different from what a general product would have, you would be portrayed as a quality product. So also the strategies that you apply, they're highly different from different markets, different geographies. Right. Now, moving on to the last point of pricing strategy. I think this is something, again, not just a financial decision. It is a perception decision, and it is a driver of how your user would make the decision of making the purchase or not. So, speaking to your sales team, understanding what different marketing managers of different competitors are doing, looking at the pricing structure of your competition and their discounting strategies, their perceived value, what is their pricing perceived as from customers, and then positioning yourself in a way where it's balanced. It does not reduce the value by giving out more discounts, but it also does not portray you as a very expensive service provider, which may not be affordable by all of the companies. So the line here that we can conclude from is, every strong decision that we want to make right now should be backed by intelligence. And whether consciously or not, all of the decisions that we make are based upon the information that we see every single day. Right. So now Oliver will help us understand how you can utilize all of this information and do the research.
I think I will just. We're running out of time slightly, so I will. Um, I'll kind of skip through this piece. I think we've kind of covered the main methodologies already, but clearly within a CI project, there are different stages. There's a matter of defining your questions, what you're trying to find out, choosing your research methodology, getting the support of the different tools available, particularly AI now, ensuring that your findings are validated, and then making sure your outputs are decision ready and really address the key intelligence questions that you've started the project with. Um, but that is not specific to competitive intelligence projects. This is the kind of cycle that you go through on any research project, and particularly a market research project. Next slide, please. Um, yeah, I think this again we can skip over, but yeah, AI is great for detecting signals and telling us what's happened, and then humans are better interpreting those signals, explaining why, and turning them into decisions. So yeah, that's how we utilize those tools in the process. And yeah, there are AI, which is obviously something that everyone's talking about at the moment, has a lot of tools which can help streamline this process, transcription of interviews, summarization of interviews, helping you discern patterns in secondary research. But in all these things, human oversight is really important. Great. Oh, we've got one more. So these are this is not limited again to CI or even to research, but these are key factors that you've got to be looking for in your output of from a project: timeliness, depth, objectivity, accuracy, readability or utilizability, and consistency. Good. Um, so um,
This is the
I
concluding slide, Oliver. I think this covers up all of the information that we have covered today, and it
Great.
also gives you a brief idea about the tools that you can use, how you can track, what to track, the key insights, the actions, and the outcomes that you should be looking for. So, we would like to conclude here. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi. Hi, Oliver. Hi, Soumya.
Yes.
I have a question. How do you prioritize which competitors to track deeply when resources are limited and the market is highly fragmented?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing I would say is that with the tools that are now available, it's possible to track a broader range of your competitors. You don't have to limit it um, too much, but different ways that you can select them comes again from this intelligence process. So speaking to the sales team, who is it that we're coming up against on a regular basis in our when we're competing? Looking at the companies that are performing best in terms of their web presence or their retail presence, etc. So these can be some of the methods for refining the set of competitors. But I think at a higher level, my advice would be to go broad to begin with. Look at, start with a big list, and then you can start reducing ones that you're finding aren't coming up frequently, aren't that relevant, aren't maybe really making an impression on the market, and focus in on the ones that are really relevant to your company.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, thank you, Oliver. Any other questions, anyone?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay.
So, how do you validate competitive pricing strategies when most of the data is not publicly transparent, meaning if they are not publicly available?
Um, well, the short answer to that is it's pretty difficult, but it's I think this is where primary research can be very helpful, both directly with competitors, but also with customers. So those are the people that can give more accurate information or more indicative information, but you're not going to get exact pricing in some of these markets, which are B2B and where there's a lot of complexity in the pricing, a lot of discounting, etc., then it's more about indications than exact pricing. Obviously, if you're talking about bigger consumer retail prices, then it's much easier and there's much more publicly available information. But in those kind of markets, picking up on indications from customers, picking up on information from competitor interviews, can help you to get a picture, but you're not going to get perfect information on that. Mystery shopping is another way, but there are some ethical issues with trying to get exact pricing in that way.
Yes, got it, Oliver. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oliver. Those answers definitely do make sense to us. All right. So we'll conclude our webinar right here if we do not have any more questions from the audience. Thank you so much for participating and giving us your time. We look forward to having you in our next webinar. That would be on 4th of April with our tech expert, Tim, and he will again be talking about how do we utilize market intelligence this time, not just competitive intelligence. And again, for marketing managers or marketers, but with a twist of tech within and a side of strategies, how you can build up your decision making skills.
Yeah, so that it's particularly for marketeers within tech companies.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good day.
Thank you.